2024 meeting of the Community Commission for Public Safety, and I should say last meeting of the interim commission, is called to order at 6:32 p.m. We'll begin by calling the roll to establish a quorum. Commissioner Brown. Commissioner Driver is present. Commissioner Gomez.
Present.
Commissioner Loizen. Commissioner Nellis. Commissioner Terry. Commissioner Troncoso.
Present.
With 5 out of 7 members of the Community Commission on Public Safety and Accountability present, we have a quorum and can conduct the commission's business. The next item of business is public comment. If you would like to share something related to the commission's work on public safety and accountability, you have a few options. You can speak at a public meeting. You can also submit public comment in writing by emailing your comment to Community Commission Public Comment at cityofchicago.org. Or you can bring a copy of your comment to one of the commission's public meetings and give it to someone on the commission or someone on the commission staff. People who wanted to speak during the public comment period tonight were asked to submit their names in writing earlier tonight. Names were then drawn at random by a member of the commission staff. Speakers will be called in the order in which their names were drawn. If your name is called to offer public comment, we ask that you approach the microphone and line up in the order in which your name is called. If you cannot approach, we got to add that to the notes. I say that every time. If you for some reason cannot come to the microphone, please make someone aware of it and we will bring a microphone to you. When it's your turn to speak, please say your name and then spell your name for the record and then offer your comment. Each speaker will have 2 minutes. We have allotted a total of 20 minutes for public comment. You ready to start? Our first speaker is Amy Thompson.
Hi, good evening, commissioners. My name is Amy Thompson, AMYTHOMPSON, and I'm staff counsel at Impact for Equity and a member of the Free to Move Coalition. I'm here today to implore the commission to act on traffic stops. As has been repeated time and again, CPD makes far too many traffic stops each year. These protectual stops target Black and brown drivers and neighborhoods, and the data shows they aren't keeping our communities or roads any safer. Announced earlier this month, the parties to the CPD consent decree are considering adding traffic stops to the consent decree requirements. However, if they did so, the Community Commission will be barred from using its power to make traffic stops policy. But traffic stops are an issue that the Community Commission is perfectly positioned to take on. Traffic stops are one of the most common ways police interact with civilians, so we must have a community-driven solution to address them. Creating community-shaped policy is what the Commission was made for. CPD's traffic stop strategy treats Black and brown drivers as mere targets for criminal investigation, which further erodes the already fragmented trust between communities and police. Addressing that crisis of trust is what the commission was made for. Traffic stops result in thousands of wasted personnel hours spent on pure fishing expeditions. Addressing inefficient uses of resources is what the commission was made for. We need you to show us and the consent decree parties that you're serious about addressing this urgent problem. Although the commission is in transition, President Driver and Vice President Terry were reappointed, and there are things you can do now. Set a hearing on traffic stops for the July meeting. Meet with the Free to Move Coalition to talk through the details of our policy proposal. Show up to the consent decree hearing on June 11th to state your position. Set up community meetings to brainstorm solutions. Talk to national experts or other jurisdictions about best practices. The new commission has been confirmed and the first meeting will be here in no time. You can and must start preparing to address traffic stops now. And no matter who does end up addressing traffic stops, the commission cannot neglect its duty to be community's voice and power broker in the city's public safety ecosystem. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Jay, followed by Jeff Tischauser.
Hello, I'm Jay, J-A-Y. I wanted to say that I found this interim commission to be disappointing in the lack of expansiveness that it's taken with its mandate and with the very serious work of this commission to keep communities safe. and to work towards creating greater safety in an equitable way for everyone in our city. I've seen that you all recently have spoken about increases in transparency with the within CPD. There was an email which went out today. So you all can clearly put together a few hundred words about internal policy changes, which may be very immaterial to what's happening on the ground in the most impacted and preyed upon communities in our city. I would hope that you would be able to put a few hundred words together about the violence that's occurring against people that use drugs and people that sell drugs. I hope that you could put a few hundred words together about the violence that happens against sex workers. That should be what you are doing. I've told this commission previously that district counselors, your co-workers who are lawyers, have said that you all have a broad remit and purview to address the issues of this city. And I have repeatedly heard this commission in various venues try to either explicitly or implicitly try to say how little power they have, how narrow their purview is, and this has been extremely disappointing. I hope that you all will do better. And for those that will not be continuing on with the commission, you need to stay involved with these processes. Don't just leave.
Hello, my name is Jeff Tischhauser. T as in Tom, Ischauser. I work for the Southern Poverty Law Center and I'm a city resident. So what is really the point of transparency without accountability? I mean, we might learn how poorly BIA conducts its investigations, which is what we learned when they released the reports on their look into the Oath Keepers, or 9 cops who are accused of being, they weren't even accused. They admitted it. They admitted it. Democratic, right? I saw all of you go to communities, go to the FOP, go to the PBA, go to the brass. Everybody had their input on this policy. And what does Superintendent Snelling do? He just says, oh, that's a great investigation. Everyone was talked to. The average time of BIA's investigation, or the interviews, are 30 minutes. One person was only interviewed for 17 minutes. That is not thorough. So I just want to end with this, particularly for the white shirts. This is a problem for y'all too. Oath Keepers, Proud Boys, 3%ers are coming after your profession. They're coming after your institution. They're not just trying to attack and target communities, okay? They're trying to decrease trust between communities and y'all. So you should be outspoken and demand everyone a public hearing. We need to hear from folks in BIA and the CPD on this issue. Thank you for your time.
Our next 2 speakers are, or 3 speakers are Michael Harrington, followed by Tawan Sims, and then Lee Bilecki.
Good evening, commissioners. My name is Michael Harrington, spelled Harrington. I'm co-chair of Network 49, a membership-based Rogers Park community organization in Chicago's 49th Ward. I also serve as a member of the ECPS Coalition, comprised of the Chicago civic and community organizations that helped draft and win passage of the Empowering Communities for Public Safety Ordinance, which created this commission. As your term with the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability comes to an end, the ECPS Coalition wishes to express our appreciation for your dedicated service and invaluable contributions to the betterment of our community. Through your tireless efforts, many of you have helped bridge the gap between law enforcement officers and the residents they serve. fostering mutual trust and understanding. Your dedication to strengthening the police accountability system and empowering Chicagoans to play a meaningful role in oversight has been instrumental in promoting transparency and fairness within our public safety framework. Of course, there's more to be done. Moreover, your willingness to explore and champion alternative approaches to public safety has paved the way for innovative solutions that prioritize the well-being and safety of all Chicago members. As a transition from your role as commissioner, your continued support of the incoming commissioners will be invaluable as they navigate the complexities of their roles and strive to uphold the principles of accountability, transparency, and community engagement that you have championed so well. We wish you all the best in your future endeavors, and may your journey ahead be filled with continued success and fulfillment. On behalf of the ECPS Coalition, I thank you all for your service to Chicago.
Thanks, Tim's. Yeah, let me get my cheaters on here. Good evening, members of the interim council. First and foremost, I want to say thank you for your devotion to the city and the commission. I would like to personally thank Commissioners Driver, Terry, and Loizon. It has been clear from all the public monthly meetings and others meetings that you have been at the forefront of engaging with both the communities and the police command staff to make a positive impact of collaboration. Unfortunately, however, on May 22nd, prior to the city council meeting, Field Secretary Frank Chapman for the Chicago Alliance Against Racism and Political Repression apparently does not like the way the process has gone, and along with so-called progressive alders, introduced a referendum to change the process in a way that is not fair and equitable to all Chicagoans. While marginalized communities are most affected by the violence that occurs, over 300 victims in the last 12 months, none of their changes hold the real enemy that causes true harm and trauma to those communities, the street gangs. Perhaps these alders need to focus on safety and collaboration in their own communities. The cancellation of the Cinco de Mayo parade as a result of gang activity was shameful and disrespectful to the good citizens of that community. Rather, they focus on police accountability. Police accountability is important. But again, they ignore the criminal element in their own communities. The last 2 weekends were especially violent in Chicago, with more children as victims, a 5-year-old on the west side. I will contact alders that I know and encourage them to defeat this referendum as it is written. And while I got a few seconds left on the subject of traffic stops, between January 1st, 2022 and May 4th of 2024, Chicago police have recovered almost 10,000 guns. That's public safety.
Congratulations. However, let's say, is this going to be like COPA, Kirsten's crew? Because if it is, there's no accountability, even though he want to speak against it. I think that the most important thing in policing is accountability, especially right now. You're getting a bunch of young people coming in. I've been dealing with them. It's the worst. I thought the old school dudes was about foolery, but this is too much. And if y'all not standing on them, holding them accountable, then they will keep their foot on our necks. And street gangs, I don't know what street gangs. They took Larry down, they took it. So these cliques that they dealing with. But that's the least of it. The policing is a gang now. We got a gang. We got a gang of people that got qualified immunity. They got the FOH, whatever it is, lawyers, a ton of resources behind them for them to come dick us around. And if they're not being held accountable, then we don't need this commission. Because we don't need COPA either, because I'm still dealing with the fact that in 2020, I was attacked by 2 thugs, whatever y'all want to call us thugs. They the thugs, dressed up, masquerading as policemen, trying to bully me in my own neighborhood. I'm from this part of town. I did everything in this part of town. I'm one of the people you don't want to deal with in this part of town, but I'm one of the people you want to deal with, period. And I won't be bullied. Not by people dressed up like police, not by lawyers, not by people that's sneaking around. I won't. Because when I find out who's doing it, I promise you, I'm gonna stand on it. It's me. It's the way I was born up. They put me in hell when I was a kid. Illegal copping. I don't want to be held accountable. That's ridiculous, Blake. So if it's gonna be like that, then we don't need it. But congratulations. Congratulations. Great team assembled. Congratulations.
Thank you. Our next two speakers are our next three and final speakers are Alma Cruiser, Charlie Isaacs, and David Orlikoff.
Stand here. Hi, it's Alma Cruiser. It's ALMA. Thank you. Cruiser, KREUSER. I just want to say that since this whole thing started, the CCPSA and then district councils, I haven't seen any positive effect from this. All I see is the increase in crime. All I see is to continue attacking police. Police aren't perfect, by no means, but they're the ones getting attacked. They're the ones that have to do a job, or they're trying to, but now they choose not to. Okay, now they choose not. They choose not to chase. Why? Because somebody may get hurt, but maybe instead of spending the money on changing street signs, removing statues, how about spending money? Let's tell it to the mayor and governor, and maybe use that money to change the infrastructure, use flashing lights to alert people that there is, some activity in the streets. But instead we go after our police, and the crime is increased. The gangs know it. The juveniles know it. They can get away with murder, and we have to sit back and be home by 10 or earlier because we don't want to get mugged. And the gentleman said it. They're a bunch of thugs, and that's what it is. And that's unfortunate. And they get to roam the streets. They get to live their life while we have to stay at home. That's not fair, by no means.
You can say. Hi, I'm David Orlikoff. I'm a district counselor in Humboldt Park in the 14th district. Thank you for your service, interim council, and congratulations to the new council. 2 points I'd like to reiterate about pretextual traffic stops. It's a huge waste of police resources, public safety that's sorely needed in the city. The OIG, Inspector General, has reported that the police are not showing up to over half of 911 calls. And this includes the most serious calls, shots fired calls that they receive that they do not respond to routinely. Resources is not the problem. Again, reported by the OIG, this is a choice that they're engaging in traffic stops. Even the specialized tactical teams are pulling people over for seatbelt violations that has no public safety implication whatsoever and killing them as a result. 96 shots. So those resources need to go to community needs and not police running rampant like cowboys and Judge Dredd. Next, about the BIA, not unrelated, but we had this investigation into hate crime association, a number of officers known to be members of the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, and BIA found no wrongdoing, which is a joke, but it's not very funny. We, of course, knew that BIA could not be trusted to handle these investigations, and they've proven that. Despite insisting that they be given this authority, it is clear that they cannot have this jurisdiction. So transparency is good, but we had transparency for this case, and what we saw was shocking. They did no investigations. All they had were sit-down interviews, and then they asked outside agencies to do the investigation for them after fighting for that jurisdiction. Agencies that then didn't have the jurisdiction to carry out that investigation. They reached out to a random news agency, but not the actual ADL or SPLC that did the actual investigation and uncovered it. So it was shocking and laughable. There was no investigation. The police can't be trusted to police themselves. All bigotry must be investigated by COPA and not by BIA. It's absurd. Thank you.
Hey, everybody. Well, you did the best you could do considering, right? So, congratulations on being, right? And I look forward to the permanent folk. I actually went to Thomas Wortham III's funeral, and so I'm glad to see that his sister is on. I just want to let everybody know that Lori Lightfoot agreed to call the campus of what is that big ugly thing on the west side? The police academy was supposed to be named after Thomas Wortham. Okay, so the third, the one that was killed. But anyway, just wanted to put that on the record. As far as the consent decree, Women's All Points Bulletin, along with a lot of other community groups, are the coalition. So when you speak to the consent decree and you make it sound as if the consent decree isn't representing the community, that's an error. The community is the reason why there is a consent decree. And I just want to make it very clear that we believe traffic stops should be under the federal government, okay? A federal judge should oversee them. So, maybe this is a conversation that the consent decree team needs to have with the CCPSA. I'm open for that, but, understand that we're not going to have a conversation where we're teaching you about traffic stops, right? You come into the room knowing what we have to do. We have to get policy in place. This is where the rubber meets the road. Almost everything pops off of traffic stops. Is the most important thing that we could ever possibly do in order to make change, transformative change in Chicago with
I guess that's me. Close it out. My name's Charlie Isaacs. I am the Assistant Director for CCPSA. I generally don't think it's good form for staff to be giving public comment, but since this is the last meeting of the interim commission and somebody twisted my arm to do it, I thought I would do it anyways. This is your last meeting. I was here for your first meeting ever before I even knew I'd be working for you all. And I just want to say it's been an absolute privilege working for each and every single one of you. I hope that tonight you go to sleep knowing that you've made a difference in our city. You've actually really changed things. A lot of the changes that you've done won't be felt for years and years to come, but you have changed Chicago and you have changed lives. And I believe you've saved lives with the work that you've been doing. It's really a privilege to work for you all. And I hope that for those of you who are not going to be on the commission anymore, go on to do great and better and wonderful things. Looking forward to continuing the work with Ramel and Anthony. Also, while I'm here, just raise your hand if you're a staffer for this interim commission. And raise your hand if you're a DC. Thank you so much for all of your service too. And can't wait to keep on working with you all in the years forward with the new commission. But I think I'd like to just welcome the room, if you're so willing, to give a round of applause to our interim commissioners, if you will.
Thank you.
And I yield the rest of my time.
We've reached the end of our public comment period. Thank you again to all of our speakers. We value your input. The next order of business is approval of minutes. Before today's meeting, draft minutes of the commission's meeting held on April 25th, 2024 were shared with all commissioners. Are there any corrections to the draft minutes that have been circulated? If there are no corrections, I move to approve the minutes of the commission's meeting held on April 25th, 2024. Somebody please second. There we go. I have moved to approve the minutes of the commission's meeting on April 25th, and Commissioner Terry has seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, we'll now move to a vote. Those in favor of adopting the motion to approve the minutes of the commission's meeting held on April 25th, 2024, please signify by saying aye. Are there any nays? The ayes have it, and the motion carries. The minutes are approved. The next order of business is a vote to amend our bylaws. The CCPSA ordinance establishes the commission's responsibility to create certain operational policies and procedures for the commission. The commission has established bylaws that are posted on our website. Today, I will present the amendment to the bylaws, which the commission received ahead of this meeting. This amendment does two things. The first is that it allows for the first permanent commission after the intercommission to both nominate and elect the president and vice president of the commission at their first public meeting. The amendment allows for the new commission to engage in the work immediately. This amendment is not a mandate, rather it just provides them an option to use it at their discretion. The second change that this amendment makes is it provides a timetable for the selection of the non-citizen advisory council. Currently, the bylaws provide detail about how the NAC is selected, but the timetable by which they will be reconsidered is not addressed. By providing a timetable for both the consideration and reconsideration of the NAC, we hope to provide future commissions with the flexibility they will need in selecting a NAC that aligns with their mission and goals. Are there any questions on this amendment? Any questions or discussions on this amendment? Seeing no further questions and also Commissioner Loizen is here, so 6 out of 7 members are present for quorum. Seeing no further questions in accordance with MCC 2-80-050, I move to adopt the proposed amendment to the bylaws. I have moved to adopt the amendment to the bylaws, and Commissioner Terry has seconded. Is there any debate on the motion? Hearing none, we'll now move to a vote. Those in favor of adopting the motion to adopt the proposed bylaws, please signify by saying aye. Are there any nays? The ayes have it and the motion carries. Our next order of business will be new business. We will begin with the presentation by Antoinette Ursitti, Chief of the Bureau of Detectives. Chief Ursitti.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. Thank you. I'm Antoinette Ursitti, Chief of the Bureau of Detectives, and I first want to thank everybody who's out here tonight, those who shared comments, those who are on the commission here, and for inviting me with the opportunity to speak a little bit about the Bureau of Detectives and the work that we do investigating all sorts of crimes. That includes felonies, misdemeanors. We do special investigations. We'll look at major accidents, arsons, missing persons. We are tasked with a large amount of responsibility to thoroughly and completely ensure that any report that is made to the Chicago Police Department is followed up on and investigated. So the most important part of our Bureau is ensuring accountability when there is a perpetrator who commits an offense against someone in the community. I think the most obvious metric for that often is spoken about are clearance rates. And I'm going to talk a little bit tonight about what we have done to put in several strategies to increase our clearance rates. But I also want to talk that beyond the measure of clearance rates, what is also a priority for us in our Bureau is how we are investigating these crimes, how we are communicating with victims and families, and how we are ensuring that there are support services that are provided for those who have experienced a crime. So before I start speaking about some of the strategies that we are working on now, I want to give a little bit of an overview that back in 2019, our department sought technical assistance to evaluate our processes for investigating homicides and non-fatal shootings and looking at ways that we can enhance what we were doing. There were a number of recommendations that were issued to us in a report from the Police Executive Research Forum, and that we acted upon quickly. Some of you may be familiar that some time ago, we had 3 areas that divided all of the police districts throughout the city and the services that were provided. And in line with that were 3 detective areas. One of the first things we did was increase back to 5 areas to increase the time with which our detectives can respond to the scene in order to canvass, identify witnesses, preserve and collect evidence. And that it was a really important first step in putting in these recommendations. One of the other things that we followed up on was increasing the number of area technology centers that we have in our department. This is a dedicated group of personnel out of each of these centers that are trained to identify, collect, preserve, and analyze digital evidence that has now become very fundamental in any sort of investigation where we're looking to present charges. So having these trained personnel within each area who can go out immediately and collect this type of evidence has really gone a long way in helping us with our investigations. We also added a number of personnel. One of the first things we did was add what we call our homicide investigative support team. These are dedicated personnel that once our detectives have identified or have developed information that has led to a suspect that we will be taking into custody, they are able to respond and to locate this individual so that we can present charges and hold that person accountable. We also added digital and criminal intelligence analysts. These are civilian personnel who are trained to help synthesize the overwhelming amount of information that we can collect in an investigation and to provide that in an actionable report for our detectives to follow up on. One of the other key recommendations that came out of that report is one that we were finally able to implement in January of this year. And that was the implementation of dedicated homicide teams within each of the areas. One of the key goals of having these homicide teams and the infrastructure that's in place with it is that it increases the time for detectives between the assignment of a new investigation and the next one that they're going to investigate. That leads to better coordination and better communication with victims and witnesses in these cases, as well as provides them the opportunity to coordinate with all sorts of partners that you need to when following up who have a schedule that sometimes hasn't always matched with the schedule that our detectives had. What this schedule also does is allow our detectives to respond as the first investigator on the scene. Depending on when a homicide may have occurred, there may have been other preliminary investigators who responded to take the initial documentation and follow up that these detectives on, again, as I had shared, a traditional watch where they would do the follow-up that's necessary with other partners, that now with this structure, they are able to immediately be responding to the scene and they own that case. And there is greater accountability for the outcomes that they have with every case that they are assigned. So with this structure, it looks like in the course of 1 week, we have a team that is on call. And whenever there is a homicide that is assigned that occurs at that time, that will be the team that responds out and owns that case. Then for the following 5 weeks, what they are able to do is to handle all of the cases that they were assigned in that week, as well as any other ones that they are working to develop their intelligence on. When we launched this team back in, or this structure back in January, one of the most important things we felt is that we had the most qualified and skilled personnel for this really important role. So we implemented a process where we were able to conduct interviews and look at their prior work. And these are all members who expressed an interest in being in this particular role. And at the end of our interviews and at the start of this program, we were able to increase the number of homicide detectives that we had by 10%. In addition to these homicide teams and this structure, some of the other things that we've done this year is add personnel. So I want to highlight that we have made a commitment to increasing the number of detectives that we can have in our department. So we increased that number by 200, and we have trained within the past year 120 detectives. And what this does is ensure that every area that we have within our division for crimes, so that can look like robberies, special victims and crimes that involve domestic violence and sexual assaults, that every one of those have a sufficient number of detectives who are trained to handle those investigations while we work to increase the number of homicide detectives that we have. We also have established a position, the Deputy Director of Prosecutorial Strategies. This is going to be somebody who develops our partnerships with federal, state, local partners, especially with prosecutors, so that we can have the types of strong partnerships that are necessary for when we present cases. We've also added 5 licensed attorney positions. That means that every detective division area will have an attorney who is going to help them collect and present the evidence that we need to have a strong case that can be approved for charges and prosecution. And then one of the last things I want to highlight is that tomorrow we're very pleased about this. We have a class of 19 latent fingerprint examiners who have gone through a rigorous 20-week training to be skilled enough to evaluate evidence where we were able to collect fingerprint evidence. And that is also going to help us with the cases that we present. One of the other recommendations that came out of this PERF report was how we could increase our non-fatal shooting clearances. What we know is that just because it is not classified as a homicide, there's a number of reasons, thankfully, that that person, their life was spared and that they are here today. But we know that somebody who is willing to shoot somebody may, in the future, be willing to kill somebody. And we want to make sure that we are having accountability for anybody who commits that type of crime. One of the things that we launched this year in March is what we call a Crime Gun Intelligence Center. This is a collaborative partnership led by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, as well as CPD, and it's bringing together 13 different agencies to timely and accurately analyze ballistic evidence that is collected from crime scenes. What this means is that when we have our evidence technicians who respond to any type of a shooting incident, they oftentimes recover fired cartridge casings. Very much like fingerprints that have unique identifiers for individuals, those casings have unique identifiers that can help us link that evidence to other shootings that may have occurred and help us connect it to the firearm that's responsible for that. By being able to now, after receiving technical assistance, streamline our process for submitting those firearm scenes and individuals who may be linked to those other scenes. By having all of our partners together within this Crime Gun Intelligence Center, they are then able to, on a daily basis, review that information, make a determination for follow-up, and identify ultimately the most prolific perpetrators of gun violence in the city of Chicago so that we can take them into custody and work with our state and federal prosecutors who are also embedded in this Crime Gun Intelligence Center and meeting with us daily. I also want to talk about another initiative that's been in place for some time, but that we've strengthened within the past year, and that's our Family Liaison Office. This is a dedicated team of 23 detectives and officers who work across all 5 areas in the aftermath of a homicide to engage with the family members who have survived the death of their loved one. They provide practical and compassionate support, ensuring that resources are offered and they understand the earliest steps of what is going to happen in the aftermath of the death of their loved one. They often make contact within 5 days, but they go a step further by ensuring that there are regular engagements that are scheduled so that we are able to bring together others who have gone through similar trauma and bring them together to empower each other through what they are facing in a number of events. There's a few events that I'll just highlight right now. The past 2 years, we've done an annual luncheon where we honor the memory of the loved ones who have passed away. And this year is the first year that we've held the National Crime Victim Rights Week events across the city in each area. So we were able to bring together a number of survivors to have a candlelight vigil, a peace walk, a blood drive, a resource fair, and to make sure that more than just in the aftermath of the incident, that we are continuing to engage and support them and to provide them information about the investigation. Some of the next steps that we're doing with the Family Liaison Office is one, making sure that we have a dedicated online presence so that anybody in the community knows how to reach out to that office and make a connection. We are working with UIC to develop a guide for families to homicide investigations. In working with UIC, that's previously conducted a number of interviews. We've learned, and from our own experience, some of the most frequently asked questions that families have. And we want to make sure that that information is available to them, especially in the aftermath of an incident. We're also working to make sure that in all of our training for lead homicide investigators, and they do receive regular training, 40 hours for their role, that we're integrating family panels of survivors so that their lived experience can be part of what our detectives take into their investigations. And the last thing I'll mention with what our family liaison office is doing is revitalizing what we call our unsolved case program. We work very closely with Chicago survivors, and many of our surviving families do as well. And they may feel comfortable coming to meet with the detectives with the Chicago survivors team to understand the direction that the investigation is going. So we're working with Chicago survivors on that. I'd like to shift away from talking about homicides and non-fatal shooting incidents to talking about other types of violent crimes that traumatize our community members. I'm sure many of you have seen in the news what is happening with robberies throughout the city. And there's a number of steps that we have taken to work across the bureaus and CPD to make sure that we are providing the most comprehensive response to the trends that we are seeing. One of the things we recently announced were 4 pillars that we have in place that's driving this work. The first thing that this comes back to is technology. I mentioned earlier our area technology center, but it's really important to understand that many investigations now, when we're presenting cases, digital and video evidence is key when we're presenting our cases to get charges. What we're doing is making sure that we have this type of technology streamlined, that we have people who are trained to use it and to gather information for our investigations. And by bringing that together, what we're doing with our detectives is making sure that we are trying to focus these investigations, especially when we're seeing patterns. By developing these patterns, we're able to put our resources around them and to put them in the right place and the right time to be responsive. But we're also able to develop and issue community alerts. And that's a very important part of our public engagement strategy to make sure that the community understands where these crimes are happening and what we are doing. We've also done a number of other initiatives, such as coordinating vehicle safety days. May 4th, we held an event at US Cellular where we had Hyundai and Kia there to help implement anti-theft devices in these vehicles, which is one of the reasons that we see those vehicles have been stolen and used in other crimes. And it's been really important to bring the community into solving the problem in that way. Last thing I want to mention in regards to robberies is, again, the importance of accountability. We have developed a robbery task force. These are members from detectives as well as from patrol and counterterrorism, who are not only developing the intelligence that are driving the missions that are being operated, but they are maintaining regular contact with state's attorney's office so that as we're presenting these cases, again, we have the type of back and forth updates regarding our cases that enables us to move the case forward for charging. With criminal sexual assaults, which is another very devastating crime that happens to victims, there's a number of initiatives that we are doing there. We, in the Chicago Police Department, in our bureau, our DNA analysis unit is working with the ISP Forensics Lab and the Cook County State's Attorney's Office to identify cases and evaluate them for any evidence that may be submitted under new technology. So, for example, we may find through genealogy that if we submit a sample from something that we had and we were not able to have any kind of identification off of it before, that with developments that have now happened, we may be able to identify an offender and hold them accountable. We've also been working with our partners in the hospitals. I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with the position of SANE, Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner, but we did hold an event back in April where we called 70 SANE personnel down with our detectives and our officers to build that relationship about how we can have compassionate and trauma-informed investigations that are better coordinated. And then the last thing I'll mention is that our detectives across all 5 areas are part of, even though it's out of the Illinois Medical District, the sexual assault response team. And this is led and spearheaded by Rush Hospital. And again, this is a dedicated effort to make sure that we are better coordinating our resources in the aftermath of a sexual assault. with hate crimes, one of our commitments for this year is ensuring that all of our detectives receive an 8-hour course on hate crime investigations that is developed specifically for investigators. One of the things we see often is that the hate crime training we offer is geared towards preliminary response by officers, which is key because that is when they're documenting what happened and collecting evidence. But we want to make sure that our detectives have training for where they are with their role. I want to speak a little bit about domestic violence and some of the work that we are doing there. One of the developments we've done in the past few months is develop a dashboard that has helped us to identify individuals who have repeatedly suffered domestic violence that has been documented, and to better coordinate our outreach to them and to move forward with trying to get accountability for the individual who has been victimizing them. This has been bringing our detectives together with the Office of Community Policing and our Crime Victim Services Unit to make sure that we're supporting our victims and getting them the resources that they need. We're also part of a consortium out of the University of Chicago that is specifically designed for child abuse cases. It offers regular training to our detectives in our Special Victims Unit. Those are the detectives who are regularly tasked with investigating crimes against children. And in addition to that training, we hold regular meetings so that we can ensure that, again, like we've talked about with some of these other crimes, especially crimes that intersect with hospitals, that we are better coordinating our communication and strategy and doing so in a trauma-informed way. One of the last things I'll mention is that we are working with the Chicago Children's Advocacy Center on the development of an initiative called Can Hope. That's based on the family justice model that tries to co-locate resources for those who are experiencing domestic violence, as well as survivors of human trafficking and sexual assault. And then I want to just close. I appreciate everybody's time and attention. Obviously, I feel that there's so many different areas that we want to ensure that everybody understands. Every one of these crimes that I'm talking about has a person who is suffering because of it. And while we often focus our attention on homicides and shootings, and understandably, that I really want to make sure everybody understands that there are a lot of people who have experienced something that deserves and requires that type of follow-up and accountability. So I want to just shift and close with missing persons investigations, which in and of itself may not be a crime, but it may intersect with a reason for the disappearance that may be criminal. And so we want to make sure at the earliest point that a missing person is reported to us, that we are taking the proper steps to move forward with that. Out of our bureau, we are regularly participating in the Missing Murdered Women Task Force. In the last 2 meetings prior to today, we've presented to the group and taken questions from the group, and have shared a little bit about our procedures and continue to show up at these meetings so that we can get input from participants about how we can improve what we're doing. We've also coordinated and participated with the medical examiner's office on their initiatives, including in April, we had a missing persons day where we were able to be on hand for anybody who wanted to come to report a loved one missing, to be able to enter the DNA of a loved one into the system, and to make sure that they are having follow-up on a missing person. And again, as many of you understand, these investigations can take time, and we want to make sure that there are a number of resources and contacts that are in place for anybody who is experiencing that. Out of our bureau, we're also expanding deflection by implementing and revitalizing an initiative in which we try to coordinate services for families where there's a young person who is repeatedly reported as missing, or that's been missing for more than 30 days. And the last thing that we are doing out of our bureau is coordinating and aligning our resources in a very similar manner that we do oftentimes with some of our older investigations, where we've been limited in the evidence that we have to move a case forward, that we want to have a systematic approach in place so that we are regularly evaluating what we do have and seeing if any developments and advancements that are in place from technology or partnerships can allow us to move that investigation forward. So I know it was a lot. I appreciate everybody's attention, and I'm not sure if we turn it back to you or if we take questions now. How would you like to proceed?
Yeah, are there any questions from any commissioners? Right, Isaac. Thank you. Also, before he gets to this question, I would just like to say thank you. I've appreciated personally the collaboration, especially during the goal setting process. As we, went through this process and added a specific goal on investigation specifically. I found this and the conversations we've had to be extremely helpful, and hope that these new initiatives yield good results.
Thank you very much.
Isaac, actually, don't leave here. Isaac had a question.
Not going anywhere.
Sorry.
Chief Ursitti, thank you so much for coming. I think we all know the huge importance of your bureau and appreciate you coming here to answer our questions. I think, one area that I have a lot of questions about is really the partnership between the Bureau of Detectives and Victim Services. I've noticed in my work outside the commission, working with victims, that oftentimes in cases of violent crimes such as, aggravated battery, assaults, there can be cases where, you'll become a victim, you'll submit a police report, you'll get your report number, you'll interact with the detective. You may never be connected to a victim services coordinator, and the detective will de facto have to take on that role for the victim, who's, and the detective might not be fully equipped to take on basically an additional job, whether, I'm sure they don't have the time or the training necessarily to do that. Can you talk about how we can improve the partnership between the Bureau of Detectives and Victim Services?
Sure. I really appreciate the question and you sharing a little bit about what you're seeing. One of the things I do want to say is we agree, and I think the dialogue is increasingly about how we're trying to take responsibilities that are better served by trained professionals with the type of background for what we may be seeing, and to put that over into their hands. And again, we are incredibly fortunate that in an agency of our size, one of the things we did this past year was And so what we have been doing this past year in anticipation of this happening is we've been holding regular meetings with the leadership in the Office of Community Policing, and specifically the Assistant Director who is in the Crime Victim Services section. One of the things that we are doing is anticipating the onboarding of new personnel, and we want to be aligned with how we're bringing them on, and that they understand how we work together with the Bureau of Detectives. But very specifically, as I had mentioned, what we're doing with domestic violence and that work I talked about with the dashboard that we built, that is really important because it does help us identify trends out of both of our areas. And we are meeting regularly to communicate what we're doing and to make sure that we are having follow-up, for example, on these domestic violence cases. And for example, if we have a victim who is working with a detective, that they're having a challenge with obtaining an order of protection or getting some other types of supports that are necessary, we are ensuring that our detectives are aware of who the liaison is and coordinating to have that communication so that there's no issues with somebody getting to court or going through the process because they don't understand how to do it. So I think one of the biggest things we could be doing is better coordination and communication. But I think as we grow, we have to make sure that we are keeping a pace with that and that we have clear onboarding protocols so that we actually know how to continue to work together and to lift each other up in what each of us is doing.
Thank you. Just one more question before I pass it on to the other commissioners. You mentioned the focus on recruiting civilian positions for evidence technicians, things like that. I think that's a hugely important place to focus. Again, anecdotally through my other work, I've noticed places where maybe you might not have the personnel to gather enough evidence. Witnesses end up moving, out of state, might leave, or, cameras that have recorded something might overwrite the video because people can't get to it fast enough. So the importance of having those evidence staffers. And I know you mentioned 19 joined recently. I think that's great. And I know the numbers are a lot more ambitious than that. What is really the recruitment strategy? Because that skill set, can be hard to find in the labor force.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's one we've given a lot of attention to by talking to other agencies across the country to see what they've been setting as the qualifications and the expectations for that role and how they've successfully been able to onboard people into those positions. I do feel like I want to clarify our evidence technicians and these fingerprint, latent print examiners do remain sworn, but we've actually increased the budget to allow for an increase in civilians who will be serving in those roles as well. Again, the amount of evidence that we are collecting, we want to ensure that if we are able to collect it from a crime scene, that it is being evaluated. And just like I was describing with our Crime Gun Intelligence Center, when you are able to link between scenes and crimes and to find the most prolific perpetrators of these crimes, it really enables us to do more with prosecutions. But in terms of how we're recruiting, we have been regularly posting positions and bringing in individuals who are meeting those qualifications to conduct interviews. But I think the most important thing, and certainly in our bureau, but I know I am not alone because we're working across other bureaus, the most important thing we can do is onboard new personnel. And I'm sure you maybe have experienced something like that yourselves in maybe a new role or position that you've taken, where if you are not adequately informed about what your position is and the resources and how to be successful and to advance in it, you're going to lose people. And again, we are looking for a very specialized role. And we want to make sure that as we are bringing those people in, that we are able to not only recruit them, but to retain them. And ideally, as we build our structure as appropriate, that we give them positions for career growth, which is another reason why people tend to leave agencies and organizations. So that's one of the ways we're addressing recruitment.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I ask a quick follow-up related to that?
Please.
And this, by the way, I think this is incredibly helpful. I think the commission did a lot of work to look at the budget, and you mentioned the increase in budget. Civilian positions to support with victim services was one of the areas of highest growth in the police department's budget. And I think it was something over 86 positions were added in total. And obviously budgets are aspirational and hiring is a lot more complicated than that. But for context for the community members, 136 detective positions were expected during the budget. And according to what Chief Ursitti said here, 120 folks are already in training. Is that correct?
In the past year, we've trained 120 new detectives. So
that
we
means
increased
again-
our budget by 100 and we've been able to fill our vacancies, and we are expecting a class later this year in October.
Okay, that's very encouraging to hear. One of the areas that I wasn't clear, I got the information and it might have been just because I missed it. Also, related to the technician support, I know that it was something like 24 positions or 22 positions were created, and you mentioned 19 of those are already in the process of being hired. Is that right? For the technician support of evidence and
Sorry,
fingerprinting?
because I thought you were talking about, you're not talking about crime victim services. Are you
No.
Okay.
I'm about to talk about that. I'm curious to know the numbers of that, but
So for our sworn latent fingerprint examiners, 19 will be graduating tomorrow.
okay, wow, that's really impressive considering the goal of, 22. And then for the victim services, I know that the goal was 22, one per each district.
For domestic violence, yes.
Yes, I don't know if I missed this, but can you tell us the number of the folks that have already been hired or that are expected to be hired for those positions?
I will say that is outside of my bureau, so I don't want to misspeak on information, but what I do know is that they are making sure that every district does have one for domestic violence, and then they are looking at victims that could benefit from some additional support for the types of crimes that they are experiencing.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that. I understand that it might be hard to speak beyond your bureau. One quick question that I know a lot of folks have asked, at least me personally, with the missing persons investigation, there's been a lot of attention, especially the disappearance of women, especially the trends related to Black women. Can you tell us a little bit about who makes up the members of the task force, what kind of support you guys are looking for, and what are the specific changes in strategy in this administration from previous efforts?
Sure. And I want to acknowledge that there may have been recent news that you're seeing about something that may be created locally in the city, but what I am talking is actually about a law that has established this level. It is led by one of the state senators, and it's bringing together a number of partners from across the state that are filling different roles that are required in that law. What we have been doing and taking away from, and I think is the most important thing and why conversations like this and different types of engagements that we do is everything that our work is about is driven by policy and procedure. And there's a lot that our department has done to make sure that it is reflecting best practices. And there does tend to be, I think, a lot of confusion about what that looks like. And so what we've been trying to do, and we actually came to these task force meetings with representatives from the Cook County Sheriff's Office and from Illinois State Police to talk about our policies. And then it was a little bit clearer where there is overlap, that there are certain things that are required by law, that those are in our policy, that there's no such thing as refusing, that you have to be missing for a certain amount of time before you can take a report. All of these things are in our policy, and we're kind of walking through that and explaining it, because what this task force is trying to get to the bottom of is, are agencies all aligned and doing the best practices across the state? Again, this is not a local task force. This is a statewide task force, but obviously Chicago is the largest municipality, but we've also been meeting with other law enforcement partners to try to walk them through what the law requires of us and what we have found through our research in developing policy to be best practice, and then also to hear their concerns. And we are able to bring that into future policy development.
I have another question, but I need like 10 seconds to make sure I ask it correctly.
Okay.
If for commissioners, we do have a lot more to get through, and it's 7
I
o'clock.
can ask you
So
this
if you-
separately. Sorry.
Thank you. And also, if you're going to ask a hiring question, there are other people and there's other mechanisms that the commission has at its disposal to submit requests for information. So let's try to keep our questions centered on things that are specifically related to the Bureau of Detectives. Thank you.
I just have one more question.
Please.
And thank you, Chief Ursitti, for being here tonight. Do you ever sleep?
Yes.
You've
Thank you, though.
You've implemented a lot of new things, so it's hard to imagine how you have time to sleep. My question is related to something that I didn't hear you address, and I'm wondering how is equity in investigations addressed in your bureau? And let me tell you what I mean by that. I think there is a perception in the community that if something were to happen to a white woman on the north side, it would be investigated very differently than if it happened to a Black woman on the south or west side. And so I think there have been concerns in the past about equity in investigations. So what are you doing as chief to ensure that every investigation is equitable?
Sure. I really appreciate your question, and I want us to get into it specifically in the Bureau, but I want to acknowledge a lot of work that the department has done, specifically through our procedural justice program. And if people are unfamiliar with this, this has been a 3-part training that we have been delivering. We actually were at the forefront in the country with implementing it and training our members on police legitimacy and on how we can have better interactions with the community to give people a voice, to make sure that we are building trustworthiness. And it is just to say that we are every year having 40 hours of training where these concepts are integrated and reinforced, and we are demonstrating it through what we're doing in training. I do want to say, in regards to what you are sharing, that is some of the feedback, we understand and we get it. And I think one of our commitments is to trying to have better communication with families, because I think when there is a lack of communication, when it looks like an investigation isn't moving forward, it can really increase that sense that it's not being handled the way that it would be handled for somebody else. One of the challenges that we have faced specifically around clearance rates, and when people are looking at clearance rates and getting an impression because some of them may be exceptionally clear closed, for example, there are a number of reasons that are behind that. But when that information is presented, it oftentimes can be represented in a way that those cases were not handled the way we would in another case. But what it means when a case is exceptionally clear closed is the offender who committed that crime may be dead, and we're not able to actually seek charges. It might look like presenting the case to the state's attorney's office and having the facts reveal that it was a crime that was committed in self-defense or defense of others. We may be putting that case through federally. And so sometimes I think when the clearance rates are communicated, and we're seeing that some cases have certain closures, it also reinforces that. And we really want to educate. And again, I want to thank everybody who is out here allowing us to talk about what we're doing and some of what we're seeing, because that's where I think that sense and that perception can sometimes get magnified when things are communicated differently, when we want to try to communicate the facts.
Thank you. Really appreciate you being willing to come and talk to us and take our questions today.
Thank you.
Our next order of business is reports and updates. And I would like to ask Commissioner Troncoso to provide us with an update on police board vacancies.
Thank you, President Driver. We are currently accepting applications for the Chicago Police Board. The commission is looking for people from a variety of professions and backgrounds, including law enforcement oversight or police accountability, public policy, social work, psychology, mental health, community engagement or organizing, or civil rights. An applicant must have at least 10 years of documented experience in any of those fields. This can include postgraduate education, and experience in one field can be combined with experience in another field to meet the 10-year minimum requirement. If you're interested, you can visit our website to fill out an application, or you can talk to one of the commissioners or a member of the CCPSA staff after the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Troncoso. We'll now move into agency goals. The next order of business will be updates on the goals for the COPA Chief Administrator. And for that, I will pass it to Commissioner Loizon and Brown to give us an update on the goal.
Thanks. Good evening, everyone. We had a very productive meeting with Chief Administrator Andrea Kirsten regarding her progress on goals a few weeks ago. The first goal we set for 2024 is creating consistency and disciplinary recommendations. COPA and CCPSA agreed that improving consistency and disciplinary recommendations is critically important to improving public trust in the police disciplinary process. In its Q1 update, COPA has shown progress in meeting the goals set in this area. Highlights include the following. COPA is on track to develop internal guidance and policy revisions to improve consistency in several areas, including disciplinary recommendations and use of deadly force analysis. A robust training schedule has also been put together for staff to learn best practices on Fourth Amendment issues, testifying, identifying witness credibility, and writing reports. This will help improve the quality of investigations and overall timeliness. The second goal is continued timeliness in closing cases. COPA is on target to revise its timeliness benchmark policy for approval by the consent decree monitoring team by Q2. They are in the process of hiring a director of mediation to help create alternative resolutions for less severe complaints. They are also working with CPD to access training records to better understand what types of training an officer has received. And they are creating clearer guidelines for all their operations outside of investigations, including communications and policy recommendations. I'm going to turn that over to Commissioner Brown so that she can discuss the remaining 3 goals.
Thank you. The third goal is improving transparency and communication. COPA continues to educate and inform the community, including CPD members, stakeholders, and youth, about its work through outreach and engagement. COPA is currently holding its People's Academy on the Northwest Side. COPA is increasing capacity around a trauma-informed approach to communications to complainant, victims, and impacted families, as well as CPD members through collaboration with NAMI Chicago and other external stakeholders. The fourth goal is youth engagement. In order to engage and educate more youth about its work, COPA is working with the city to hire summer interns and make regular visits to high schools. COPA will also be participating in the MICVA Challenge this summer. The fifth and final goal is equity. The aim of this goal is to identify patterns of inequity that underlie cases of police misconduct and recommend policy changes. At the same time, focusing on internal equity and wellness goals is crucial to improving COPA's operations. COPA has met its goal of hiring a senior equity officer. COPA is in the process of hiring a data scientist. The chief responsibility of this person will be to work with software that can help identify patterns and practices around police misconduct. On April 4th, COPA provided CCPSA with a copy of the internal wellness plan that they created with NAMI Chicago. Again, I want to thank Andrea and her team. Through the end of the first quarter, COPA has made progress towards the completion of its 2024 goals.
Thank you, commissioners. Now I would like to ask Commissioner Loizan and Troncoso to provide us with an update on police board goals.
Thank you. We had a very productive meeting with President Cooper, Vice President Wolf, and Executive Director Caproni to discuss the 2024 goals. It's important to mention that before we begin our update, that the recent rulings on arbitration have hindered progress towards completion of some of the goals. The first goal we established is additional training of police board members. The police board has assessed its current training for members, and they will be scheduling training on procedural justice and the consent decree. This training will take place when the new members of the police board are seated this summer. The second goal was establishing greater consistency in decisions. The police board hasn't issued any decisions in 2024 because of the court order on arbitration. However, this is an area they will be looking for ways to create greater consistency in collaboration with the new members. Commissioner Troncoso will discuss the remaining three goals.
The third goal established is improved transparency. Greater transparency is critically important to improving accountability. I'd like to commend the police board leadership on their efforts to keep the community informed on the status of the arbitration decisions and how they're proceeding. To create greater transparency, the Chicago Police Board is making improvements to its website. It's also looking at ways it can make changes to the rules through an open community process. The fourth goal we decided on is standardization of procedures. The police board president will continue to discuss with representatives of the Office of Public Safety Administration, the Chicago Police Department, and CCPSA ways to increase and standardize the information provided to the board regarding appeals by applicants for the position of police officer who have been removed from the eligibility list due to the results of a background investigation. The fifth goal is improving community engagement. The board staff works with CAN TV to publicize its monthly meeting. They're also getting the word out to aldermen and other stakeholders about the meetings.
Thank you, commissioners. Commissioner Brown and I will now provide an update on the goals for the CPD superintendent. We'll start with Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. President Driver and I had a productive first quarter meeting with Superintendent Snelling to discuss CPD's quarterly goal progress. CPD demonstrated progress toward their goals in this quarter. However, we are looking forward to learning about continued progress throughout the year. We are eager to receive the superintendent's plans to revise the district strategic planning process and to be included in and updated on the workforce allocation study progress. CPD's first goal for 2024 is to articulate a crime-fighting strategy that is rooted in constitutional policing and supported by the community. This goal has 4 objectives connected to that goal, and CPD provided information in fulfillment of 2 of these objectives in quarter 1. Objective 1.1 is about ensuring that all members of the department have a strong foundation of constitutional policing to guide their work. This includes providing training in constitutional policing with a special focus on constitutional policing guidelines related to traffic stops and consent searches of vehicles. In this first quarter, CPD shared their plans for training and provided training records to date on select trainings. CPD reported that they have begun the year-long planning and preparation process to roll out scenario-based in-person training in 2025 specific to implementing constitutional traffic stops. In addition, I will add, we were also given access to those training materials and were able to look them over and study them to some extent, which was very helpful. Objective 1.2 is related to reviewing and tightening the district level problem-solving oriented policing plans. These plans are supposed to be completed in conjunction with the community and address both district and citywide challenges. In this first quarter, CPD shared all the district's current strategic plans. However, the superintendent is reviewing and revising the current district strategic plan model to ensure the tool is meeting the needs of the community and aligning with best practices. The commission expects updates on the progress toward this deliverable in Q3, and districts should begin implementing the revised model in Q4. CPD said that district strategic plans will be made with input from district councils and community stakeholders. That deserves a cheer. Objective 1.3 and 1.4 pertains to how CPD intends to improve homicide and violent crime clearance rates that, one, result in accountability for those who have perpetrated these crimes rather than to simply close the case, and two, how CPD plans to collaborate with local and federal partners. We anticipate hearing about some of this. We did hear about this. We no longer anticipate when Chief Ursitti provides her update in this when she provided her update in this meeting. Sorry about that. Tense matters. The second goal CCPSA set for CPD in 2024 is all people in the city of Chicago know how to engage with the department and know that every Chicago police officer is a community policing officer there to support them. This goal has two objectives, and CPD provided information in fulfillment of one of these objectives in this quarter. With objective 2.1, CPD committed to evaluating the current state of all community policing efforts, capturing gaps, redundancies, and opportunities for improvement, and publishing the assessment in the fourth quarter of 2024. The second objective included defining and supporting collaborative relationships between district councils and CPD's district commanders. Both CPD and district council members provided feedback that add additional clarity about roles, responsibilities, and best practices that would be helpful given the newness of this endeavor. In the first quarter, CPD released a draft general order spelling out the communication and partnership expectations for district commanders with district council members. These two documents produced by CPD in support of this goal include, one, a policy to assist department members to understand their duties and responsibilities in relation to the CCPSA, and two, a resource guide. This resource guide provides links to department resources and practical recommendations of how district commanders and district council members can work together. The resource guide is meant to be a shared living document open to continued edits and improvements over time. Oh, I'm reading a few more. I was thinking it was your turn. We should have come up with a rap or something to do this. Wow. The third goal CCPSA set for CPD in 2024 is provide quality investigations and timely communication with victims and their families. This goal has 4 objectives, all of which center around improving investigations and support to victims. The objectives include adding and training qualified staff, both civilian and sworn, strengthening the quality and timely support of victims' families by adding more personnel to victim support services, and improving physical and digital evidence collection. We heard about all of those things tonight. The superintendent is required to report progress on all these objectives in the upcoming quarters. And the reason Chief Ursitti was here tonight was to discuss some of CPD's progress on these topics. Now, Commissioner Driver is going to discuss the last 3 goals.
Before I start reading, I apologize to you for, I started to laugh while you were talking. And it's because we work with our staff to draft all of these notes before we get here, and Adam reviews everything. But this whole time he's just furiously writing. And I'm like, Adam, what are you writing? These are your words. What? That's what I was thinking while we were talking. It's like Adam is furiously taking notes on the notes that he drafted.
He's putting it in song form, I'm sure.
The fourth goal CCPSA set for CPD in 2024 is to improve member morale by building a comprehensive culture of wellness. Of the 4 objectives, Quarter deliverables are expected for one objective, and progress updates are provided for all the objectives. The first objective involves CPD partnering with the City of Chicago's Department of Fleet and Facility Management, known as 2FM. This is a group that supports the operations of the city. Together, they are developing a facility analysis improvement plan for 2024. CPD and 2FM are holding regularly monthly meetings to discuss ongoing facility improvement plans, and they have categorized the facility issues and have begun short, medium, and long-term planning. Short-term includes 2FM's building engineer took a building assessment to log all issues and start work orders. Medium-term, 2FM is working to harden department facilities, which can include the installation of updated camera systems, access control, and bullet-resistant glass in the districts. The estimated completion timeline for this project is August of 2024, and we expect a report on that progress. Long-term, 2FM in the department are starting to identify long-term capital improvements. Objective 4.2 is about providing timely communication with department members about pre-planned large-scale events that may require mandatory overtime. The department is currently preparing a 2024 summer event calendar to share with department members. The calendar will help members ensure that they have time to address childcare issues, family concerns, or other disruptions that might occur due to any expected changes in work schedule. Objective 4.3 centers on creating a discipline matrix that will involve the participation of many stakeholders, including collective bargaining units, civilian oversight agencies, and community members. The department has not yet convened these stakeholders to begin conversations about the creation and implementation of a disciplinary matrix. CPD provided commissions with updates on their wellness programs and their quarterly deliverables, including 2023 Officer Wellness Support Plan sets plans for overall wellness initiatives, an annual report to the superintendent on officer wellness, which summarized all the officer wellness initiatives undertaken in 2022 and 2023, and the Independent Monitor Officer Attorney General Monthly Officer Wellness Report, which includes an overview on current wellness programming and is produced for the IMT, Independent Monitoring Team, and will be shared with the Commission quarterly. The fifth goal CCPSA set for CPD in 2024 is to provide quality leadership and build a leadership pipeline for the department. CPD provided materials demonstrating the leadership training development for sworn and non-sworn exempt level members. The superintendent is committed to continuing to build and develop a leadership program to foster departmental leaders focused on impacting organizational culture. The commission expects to receive the superintendent's leadership development program training plans by Q3 of 2024. The sixth goal for CPD in 2024 is working out the scope of the work. The first objective under this goal is to undertake a comprehensive workforce allocation study. The commission recognizes that this analysis will take time to execute and wants to be well informed about the planning and implementation of the workforce allocation study. This goal included a commitment to providing opportunities for the commissioners and district council members to play a role as key stakeholders and as channels for public oversight on the study's features, the study's progress, and the ultimate design of an allocation plan. The commission will continue to push CPD to publicize the mechanism and process for community to provide feedback on the workforce allocation study. As part of Objective 6.2, the superintendent committed to short-term objectives in support of the long-term workforce allocation study. The short-term objectives include identifying a workforce allocation partner, developing a workforce allocation implementation timeline, and publishing current organizational charts. Reportedly, CPD has identified and is confirming a partner with the City of Chicago, but the commission has not yet seen any evidence of progress towards these short-term goals and will push CPD to publicize and produce them. As part of effectively managing resources, CPD has emphasized civilianization, and Objective 6.3 is related to civilian hiring. As part of CPD's civilian hiring plan, they are committed to providing the commission with an overview of the quarterly hiring process. In Q1 of 2024, CPD filled 16 civilian positions. CPD expects that number to increase in the first half of Q2, as there are currently 41 positions slated to start between April 1 and 16. I'm sure that date is wrong. CPD has made some progress on this goal, but has many civilian vacancies to fill before the end of the 2024 to meet their larger goals. Again, I want to thank Superintendent Snelling and his team. Through the end of the first quarter, CPD has made progress towards the completion of its 2024 goals. We'll now move on to miscellaneous business. Before that, is there any questions, comments, concerns from commissioners on any of the three goals? So we'll now move on to miscellaneous business. As many of you may have heard, Mayor Johnson selected 7 permanent commissioners for CCPSA, and the City Council has approved 6 of the 7. I'd like to thank the nominating committee for the enormous amount of work that they put in to develop the first ever nomination process from scratch and work together to nominate an outstanding group of candidates for the mayor's consideration, all while meeting their obligations under the ordinance. Comprised of an elected delegate from every district council, the nominating committee's work represents the realization of the vision of the ordinance for a community-driven selection process for commissioners, ensuring the permanent commission's independence and legitimacy. With the new commission's appointment taking effect on June 23rd, this will be the last meeting of the interim commission. Commissioners will now have a few minutes to provide statements reflecting on their time served with the interim commission. Would anybody like to speak?
We always have to test these mics because you never know if you've been to any of our meetings. Being on this commission has really been the experience of a lifetime, and I'm so thankful for it. Over the past 2 years, we've seen a lot, from being appointed 8 months late with only 1 staff member hired out of about 20 budgeted, which was Adam, and not even having emails or business cards, to leading a historic search for a superintendent, ending the gang database, having discussions about ShotSpotter and arbitration, seeing commissioners and our friends and family, even ourselves, be victims of crime, and much more. Like any government agency, this commission could easily be a do-nothing body, but what prevents that from happening is people that care. Staff that put in countless hours on nights and weekends for a job that definitely doesn't pay them overtime, and the community keeping a watchful eye on us as well. If there's one thing I've learned here, it's that making change doesn't mean that you have to be a senator or a CEO. It just takes ordinary people doing extraordinary things. People that were bystanders, being ticked off, saying enough is enough to a system that isn't working, and saying that if no one else will do it, I will. Still, much of our work remains unfinished, in particular, accountability for the way we treat victims, the way they are, in my opinion, disrespected at every turn and left in the dark without enough communication or services. This is a topic not nearly talked enough about, yet one that completely breaks people's trust in our system the second they experience a crime and try pushing through the bureaucratic process that follows afterwards. Their experience is forgotten in our public safety dialogue. I beg the next commissioners to tackle this over their term and welcome the chance to still work with them once I'm off. And Ramel and Anthony, I have your phone numbers. Thank you to our tireless staff, to the community that gave us the space to have a messy and honest dialogue and figure things out in front of their eyes, and to my fellow commissioners who it has been an honor to work with. While I'm leaving, I'm confident that we're putting this commission in a strong position and putting it in good hands, the hands of Chicagoans. Thank you.
Wow, you guys are not preachers. I got something already here. What a wild ride this has been. During my time on this commission, I've worked with CPD goal setting, COPA goal setting, and with the Non-Citizens Advisory Committee. I feel passionate about all three. I've been a faith community voice and a queer voice on this commission. I had hoped to continue the work, but I was not nominated, and so I am moving on to other things. I want to say some thanks and offer gratitude, and then end with a call to action. I want to thank Will Calloway for showing me what persistence looks like. Thanks to Lucretia Burtz and the Community Renewal Society for encouraging me to apply to be a commissioner. Thanks even to former Mayor Lori Lightfoot for appointing me despite my refusal to sit on the commission with one of the other people nominated in the group of 14. Adam Gross, you are the reason we got stuff done, and sometimes the reason it took a little longer to do so. Thanks for forgiving me when I screwed up. To the rest of the staff, we could not have done this without all of you, and I am grateful to each one of you. Just remember to do as Adam says, not as he does when it comes to working too much. And to my fellow commissioners, I would not have chosen anyone different than you to do this with for the past couple of years. I value each one of you and respect you for who you are and what you are doing to make this city a better place for all. We weren't perfect, but I can't believe how much we've accomplished despite having full-time jobs in other big things. I also owe deep gratitude to my congregation, Lincoln Park Presbyterian Church, for making it possible for me to do this work. They made many sacrifices and supported me through it all. As I leave this commission, I will refocus on my organizing work with a faith coalition across Chicago convened by Live Free Illinois as we advocate for creating by ordinance a permanent office for gun violence prevention in Chicago that would have a guaranteed budget of $100 million to begin. We believe this permanent office will address community violence reduction, victim services, budgeting transparency, and like this commission, a community oversight board. Every time a new mayor comes into office, they spend time and money on violence reduction plans when what we really need is a permanent office to oversee it and be accountable for it across administrations. If you want to work with me and the Faith Coalition on this ordinance, or if you want to be sure your alderperson supports it, please talk to me after the meeting tonight. I hope our new commissioners, our new commission, will support this ordinance publicly and with the city council. The last thing I want to say to you, the community, is thank you for all of the support, for your public comments, for pushing us to do more and to do better. Keep it up. Push the next commission really hard. No, I'm kidding. It takes all of us to create the healing we need so everyone in this city can thrive. Thank you.
Really quickly, I don't have much. I just wanted to echo the sentiments of, I would say I would not have done this with a different group with all of the challenges, as many of them that the community is not aware of. And so I just appreciate the dedication that you all have, because many people on the other side have a lot of opinions, but they do not understand the level of commitment and level of passion and the amount of love that we have for the city of Chicago. And so I just want to thank you all for this experience, and I look forward to continuing this work with Anthony and the new commission. And I would ask that you all stay close, because you know a lot that many people don't know. And so I can hold you accountable to when you come here with your opinions, because you know what really goes down. So thank you all.
Okay, I'm going to do it really fast because I feel bad not thanking our staff. Adam Gross held us together with spit and duct tape for a really long time. And he deserves like a standing ovation right now because no one works harder. And I just want to say that this has been a total honor and privilege for me for many reasons, not the least of which serving with the people on this table right now. All the people who I see in the audience who come every single time, it's remarkable. And even though we don't always agree, there's no doubt in my mind that you are all amazing Chicagoans. To our law enforcement people, thank you for serving. And the last thing I'm going to say is that I always introduce myself as a mom of 4 and the youngest of 5 kids. After this experience, I'm going to up my sibling count because I did find a brother and a sister through this process in Ramel and Anthony. We don't look alike, but our hearts are in the same place. And ultimately, as I wind up, I think I ended up where I started, which was joining this commission, believing that in the end, we all pretty much want the same thing. And I think that's true still after, nearly 2 years doing this work. So I commend all of you for fighting for a better Chicago. I hope we'll all continue to do it one way or the other. That's it. Thank you.
I think every other commissioner is a better speaker than I am. And I agree with everything that you all have said, so I won't repeat it. I would like to thank especially the district counselors. I think this has been a huge experiment. And yeah, you guys all deserve incredible amount of gratitude and a big applause and a big hug, because I know the work that you all do is just as hard as ours. Obviously, I want to thank the department, all the support staff from COPA, all the amazing leaders that we have at the police board. I think this is all about making sure that we continue the work that we've been doing, but there is still a lot of work to be done. And I know that everyone here is committed to doing that. I'm committed to continuing in whatever capacity I can. And it fills me with great hope to know that there's still a lot of people that are angry at us, because I believe that that was the purpose of this commission, to continue despite of who's here. At the end of the day, it's about the community. And I hope that, as people have said, the commission is held to a great level of accountability in the same way that we want to hold all the agencies that we oversee to that level of accountability. So thank you for the grace, for the knowledge, and for showing me how humbling it is to be a public servant.
So I would just want to start by saying thank you all for trusting me. This has been an extreme honor for me to be able to serve in this capacity in the city that I'm born and raised in and love. Also, thank you to you all's family, because I don't think a lot of people realize that, my personal opinion, our ordinance is a little broken in the sense that it's almost really impossible to do this job effectively and work a full-time job. Every single one of us has a full-time job or are in school that is taking the majority of our time. So when we're doing this stuff, it's really going late into the night, or using personal PTO and taking time away from family. It's essentially having two jobs. And there are folks who are doing 20, 30 hours a week on top of other obligations that they have. So I just really appreciate you all. We've seen 4 superintendents during this time. We've seen a lot of transition in the last 19 months. But I do believe that things are trending upward and things are getting better. So I would just like to say, 1, thank you for trusting me. And 2, thank you for all of the work that you put in. It doesn't feel like a goodbye to me, because I know I'm gonna still talk to y'all like
Thanks. I need a moment to rebut everything that was just said. I'm here with certificates of appreciation from Mayor Johnson to all the members of the commission who are wrapping up what I think is just an extraordinary amount of work under very trying circumstances. Almost 2 years ago, these 7 commissioners took on a huge responsibility, which was to create a whole new part of government that is designed to make policing and public safety more democratic and more effective. And there are a million ways that whole process shouldn't work. And it sometimes felt like there were a million ways every week that the whole thing might just collapse, and so far it hasn't, and that is entirely because of the work of these 7 commissioners. When they started, as you've heard, they had basically no staff, which meant that to a very great extent they were acting as both commissioners and staff, keeping this thing afloat. I know in a lot of conversations with commissioners and district council members and talking to people outside, I hear this thing again and again where people talk about this work as building a plane and flying it at the same time. And I want to be super clear about this point. Building a plane and flying it at the same time is a really bad idea. And like, if anyone ever asks you to fly a plane while it's being built, you should say no. But these 7 people said yes, and they said yes, even though this isn't a plane that's been built before. So there's not much of an instruction manual. And they knew that there would be a lot of turbulence. And they knew that there wasn't really a runway for taking off or for landing, because that's being built too. And despite all of that, over the last nearly 2 years, they just a couple of months into this process were faced with the task of running a national search for a new police superintendent. And they did that having only worked together for a few months, and taking that on with very little staff, and ran a process that engaged literally thousands of people in the selection of a new superintendent, which was an entirely unprecedented thing in the history of Chicago. They changed policy on the way we collect data about gang affiliations, and about how the police department will deal with police officers who associate with racist or extremist groups. There is clearly still work to do on all of those things, but from a policy perspective, they made giant-sized progress, and on both of those things, again, did it engaging thousands of people across the city, setting police department policy in a way that it has never been set before. Changing the composition of the police board, and the list goes on. So it was an extraordinary undertaking with extraordinary challenges. And I thank you all for allowing us into the work. And I'm eternally grateful for all of you for somehow getting this thing into the air, and keeping us from crashing so far. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you, Adam. What am I supposed to say now? The commission's next regular meeting will be Thursday, June 27, 2024, 6:30 p.m. at St. Sabina, which is located at 1210 West 78th Place. Follow all of the commission social media site. And there being no further business before the commission, this meeting is now adjourned.